On the Israeli ID, it does not say you are an Israeli national. It says you are a Jewish national, Lebanese or Syrian or Palestinian. In Israel, you don't have that. You have a completely fake, invented Jewish nationality that ironically is completely against the Jewish religion. So that's why I think fundamentally Israel will collapse.
Given all that has happened, I mean, we can look at the entire year of 2024, the collapse and the overthrow of the Syrian government, the ceasefire in Lebanon, to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. What is the state of the resistance right now, in your estimation? How do you see developments unfolding?
Well, obviously, if we talk about a war of liberation, which this is a war of liberation for Palestine, any war of liberation against colonial rule is not a short war. There is no decolonization war that lasts less than 5 years. And the trigger of Al-Aqsa flood is the beginning of this ticking clock that we have. And clearly also from historical record, there is no way to decolonize a nation with less than 2 million martyrs. Between 2 to 6 million martyrs were required to liberate Algeria and similarly to liberate Vietnam. And that doesn't mean 2 million Palestinians are the price for the liberation of Palestine, but 2 million at least people in the region, as happened with the liberation of Vietnam, that included, in those 6 million that perished in that war, that included millions of Laotians and Cambodians that got engulfed in that war of liberation. So anyone that thinks that we're going to liberate Palestine easily, especially that, again, what is special right now about this war in comparison to other decolonization wars is that the whole Zionist empire, what I would call now a Zionist empire, it's not even an American empire anymore, because the official religion of all the Western states is Zionism right now. The whole Zionist empire is engulfed in this war. Vietnam didn't have to fight anybody other than the French and the Americans combined, let's say. And even then, it was a very short period when both the French and the American armies were fighting it. The Algerians had to only fight the French military. In the situation of even Gaza, without even talking about what happened in Lebanon, what happened in Syria, what's happening in Yemen, looking at what happening in Gaza over the last 14 months is that the whole combined might of the Zionist empire was put into effect against the fighters on the ground in Gaza. And that's what should be put into perspective when we want to judge where are we today. So if we're still in the first year and a half, 14, almost 15 months of this war, and at this point still the Israelis and the whole Zionist empire is unable to break the will of the people in Gaza, the Palestinians that are interned in the extermination camp of Gaza. That is, it means we are seeing a huge success for the resistance. Look, the Warsaw Ghetto uprising didn't last this long, and it only had to deal with the Nazis. It didn't have to deal with the whole might of white supremacy and the whole might of what we now see as the Zionist empire. The fall of Syria, we can talk about it more. I am Syrian. I'm a Syrian citizen. And I have a lot of history in my family involved in many stages of Syria since its Ottoman rule till today. And we can discuss why this fall of Syria happened and why isn't also not the end of the resistance, why it should have been actually expected that the fall of Syria was going to happen.
Dmitri, I want to bring it to you. You have traveled to the region extensively in your journalistic work, especially in the last year, from Palestine to Lebanon. What have these travels taught you about this current moment, in particular, the state of the resistance that I asked, Laith?
First of all, I think what stands out for me is that the balance of resolve, this is my strong impression, is on the side of the resistance. I saw this not only during my 5 trips to South Lebanon and Beirut in the past 2 years. I saw this when I was in Palestine itself, in the Tulkarm and Jenin refugee camps in March of this year. This is a very important factor in any struggle of this nature, particularly in what is, in effect, a war of attrition. The balance of resolve is very important. And I think that the consensus amongst the resistance groups is that this is a definitive battle that they must win no matter what the cost. And I think that they're willing to pay, and they've demonstrated this abundantly, a much higher cost than the Zionist colonists are prepared to pay. One of the things I've been reporting on is how many Israelis have fled Israel during the past 14 months, going to places such as Cyprus, going to places such as Greece, where I maintain a second home, going to other parts of the Mediterranean. They're in Morocco in large numbers. I've seen credible reports of that. Whereas the people of the region who are being decimated, or civilian populations are being decimated by the Zionist entity, are staying put for the most part, and are determined to take a stand. And in terms of what's actually happening on the ground, there are reports backed up by video evidence of Hamas and other Palestinian resistance groups in Gaza continuing to inflict casualties on Israel by a variety of means, by attacks with their mortar forces, by attacks by snipers, by attacks on their armored personnel carriers, tanks, D9 bulldozers. They're continuing to put up quite astonishing resistance when you consider that Israel has dropped more munitions on Gaza during the last 14 months than were dropped on London, Dresden, and Hamburg during the Second World War. We see that the Yemeni forces are continuing to penetrate Israeli air defenses. Just absolutely extraordinary when you think of what Yemen has been through. The Saudi-led bombardment of the country, effectively a genocide that was waged against the Yemeni people, led by the Saudis with the full backing of the West. And then there are popular militias in Iraq, which continue in collaboration with the Yemeni forces to launch successful attacks on Israeli military targets. Hezbollah hasn't been defeated. That's very clear. If it had been defeated, Israel would be occupying South Lebanon, if not more than that. But in fact, it withdrew its so-called elite forces, the Golani Brigade, because it had taken a vicious beating at the hands of a resistance group that doesn't have the benefit of air defenses. It doesn't have the benefit of a massive air force. It doesn't have the benefit of a bottomless well of munitions from the country in the world, the United States, which has by far the largest military budget. And the last thing I want to say about the state of the resistance is this is not a subject you can assess without looking at the state of the opponent. Strength is a relative concept. So we can't assess the strength of the resistance without looking at the condition of Israel. Israel is a mess. It's a complete mess. It has been demonstrated that its ability to wage a land war is pathetic, in my opinion. I'm no military expert, but I think that's been demonstrated by its inability to defeat Hamas and Hezbollah. It's been demonstrated that its air defenses are porous against hypersonic missiles. Its economy is in rapid decline. As I indicated, many people, especially those who are most mobile in Israeli society, are leaving in large numbers. The country is a pariah. Its prime minister, I believe, just refused to go to Poland for an important ceremony because he was concerned about being arrested. He has an indictment against him at the ICC. There's a genocide case pending against the state of Israel at the International Court of Justice, which I think it's doomed to lose in the long run. Amnesty International just came out and declared Israel to be committing the crime of genocide, the crime of crimes. This country is in serious trouble. And it's not just me who's saying this. It's not just Laith who's saying this, or Dan. You can listen to other people with military expertise, diplomatic expertise, people like Lawrence Wilkerson, people like Alistair Crook, who are saying that Israel is confronting an existential threat, which is largely of its own making, and that it may not be here much longer. And that happens to be my view, despite the setbacks which the resistance has suffered.
Dan, I want to bring you in here because earlier you were saying that Israel is mired in internal contradictions. Talk about this, because I know you've done journalism work on this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dmitri's absolutely right. Everything he described with the losses and the Israeli military has suffered. I think there's, I can say I was actually in Israel, occupied Palestine, in August for a week, and I didn't announce it because I was filming a documentary that will be coming out hopefully soon. But one of the things that I noticed is I spoke to so many people who want to leave, who are just like, I'm done with this society. I can't bear being here anymore. And these are not, people who are not Zionists or people who don't want to stay. It's that they can't bear it anymore. And so, I mean, that's something I can tell you from actually having been there relatively recently. There's something I think even deeper that, and this is the real reason that I think Israel will ultimately collapse. And it's an ideological process, because the whole idea of Zionism, the very definition of Zionism, and I think people really need to understand this in a better way, especially anti-Zionists. If you really want to understand Zionism, you have to be able to define it. And the concept of Zionism is that Judaism is not a religion, it's a nationality. And when the Zionists first came around, they were basically people who said religious Jews that have existed for thousands of years and want to live separate from the rest of society and reject secularism and just want to stay kind of in their own little world, separate from everyone else, and study Torah and this kind of thing. Zionists were basically Europeans who rejected all of that and said, that's disgusting, that's a horrible way to live. All of the anti-Semites who hate us are actually right, and it's because of them. You can look up statements from Vladimir Jabotinsky, the founder of revisionist Zionism, which is the dominant strain of Zionism today, where he says that the anti-Semites are right about the Jews. This is what the Zionists said. So in order to create this idea of a Jewish nation, to invent it, they had to take Judaism and completely change it into something that doesn't exist. A nation is something that happens in an organic process. It's people who live together. They, for example, share the same language. Okay, so in the United States, basically everyone speaks the common language is English, is Americanized English. For Zionists to create that, they had to create a new language. They took the biblical language of Hebrew and invented a completely new language. And to show how ludicrous the invention was, for example, I can use the word bitachon. In biblical Hebrew, bitachon is like it's like a faith in God, or it's like belief in God. When Zionists created modern Hebrew, they took the word bitachon and changed it to mean security, like homeland security. The minister of defense in Israel is called the minister of bitachon. There are numerous examples like that. Had they just completely emptied all of the religious concepts from Judaism, just turned it into like rank European nationalism. Now, the thing is, they could not, if you are going to say you are a Jewish nation, what does that mean to be a Jew? Because for the original Zionists, and even many of them today, that means they just want to live in Tel Aviv and sip coffee and live like they're in Europe without any Arabs around them, with a bunch of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and they stay over there, or in refugee camps in Lebanon or the West Bank or Jordan, and they stay over there and use the military to attack them when necessary. Okay, that's what some of them do. But the logic of because Judaism is actually a religion, there was a strain that created a concept of religious Zionism that basically took nationalism and said, no, this is actually a religion. Our religion is nationalism. And that's what religious Zionism is. And that is the completely dominant strain in power today. Everyone around Netanyahu, not only Ben Gvir, not only Smotrich, But all of the institutions, the government, the military, the media, all of them are filled at the top with religious Zionists who believe that we have to fully ethnically cleanse all of this land. That's why they want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. That's why Smotrich has his plan for the West, presented his plan for the West Bank, the subjugation plan to ethnically cleanse it, and whatever Palestinians want to stay have to declare loyalty to the state of Israel. So there is no real definition of a Jew in Israel. There's even Supreme Court decisions where they try to come up with that. On the Israeli ID, it does not say you are an Israeli national. It says you are a Jewish national. So if you're a Jewish national, but then can your religion be Christian? Can you be a Christian Jew? It doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical. And so because there is no unifying concept of what a Jewish national is, then this is something that is bound to fail when it comes under enough pressure, and the United States, stops just keeping it going. And so, whereas in Lebanon or Syria or Palestine, you have people of all kinds of different religions and ethnicities that consider themselves first and foremost Lebanese or Syrian or Palestinian. In Israel, you don't have that. You have a completely fake, invented Jewish nationality that ironically is completely anti-Jewish, is completely against the Jewish religion. So that's why I think fundamentally Israel will collapse.